Hello and welcome to the editorial analysis of the Hindu. Today we shall be discussing the editorial of the 21st of August. But before we begin, one correction. In the previous video, which was of the 20th of August, the slide by mistake was that of the 19th of August. So it has been a mistake that it has been mentioned that that is the editorial of 19th. That is not the editorial of 19th. It is the editorial of the 20th of August. So please accept our apologies for that one mistake. So coming to the discussion today, the first article that is important is on Swami Vivekanand, that is the monk who shaped India's secularism. Very important article. Leaders like these, few leaders like these, like Swami Vivekanand, Gandhiji, or for that matter any other leader whom you personally also feel is inspirational to you, those kind of leaders are what you should yourself also select. And you should study about them, you should know about their basic ideologies, and then you should try and use those ideologies, those messages in your papers. It is going to give you more marks. Also, this is a part of your syllabus now in the ethics paper, so that is important. Especially in this particular context, the views of Swami Vivekanand from the prism of secularism is important for the general studies paper 1 also. So this has relevance from these two point of view. So that is the relevance of this particular article. So coming to the issues, first and foremost, you should know some basics about Swami Vivekanand. He was born in the year 1863 on the 12th of January precisely. At that time his name was Narendra Nath Datta, so this is what is important. His name was N. Datta, that is Narendra Nath Datta. So these are some basics about these leaders who are very inspirational that you should know. Also, what is important about him is that he had several ideas on Hinduism as a religion. He had talked a lot about Hinduism. He talked a lot about nationalism, nation building. He also talked about education, which he said that education was not a means to a job. He said that is not the purpose of education, but the education has a purpose of character building. It should help build a person who can contribute to the society. So that was what he believed was the idea behind education. In the year 1897 he established the Ramakrishna mission. So that is another aspect that is important from the history point of view. So these are some basics that you need to know about Swami Vivekanand. Next, what is important is his concept or his ideal of shared responsibility. Very important, very relevant in the present times. He gave them some concept of Daridar Narayan. He said this concept of Daridar Narayan, sometimes students ask me that, ma'am, is it acceptable to write in Hindi, these Hindi or Sanskrit verses? Yes, it is acceptable. Try and mention about these verses. In fact, they give a good impression also. Talk about them in the ethics paper, but you should translate them in brackets. You should write the meaning also. So Daridar Narayan basically means a service to the poor is service to God himself. That was the idea that Swami Vivekananda propagated. He said that if millions are living in hunger and ignorance, then all the other people who are sleeping peacefully, despite the fact that millions are hungry, are traitors. They are cheating those people because it is at the behest of these people that we have gained our education, we have gained our facilities, and then how is it that we are not concerned about our fellow brothers and sisters who are sleeping hungry and who are, for that matter, dying and not living a peaceful life? So that is the idea of a shared responsibility that Swami Vivekananda has given us, and this is the idea that is very relevant in the present times, considering the gap that is widening between the rich and the poor. So that is where this concept of shared responsibility given by him becomes important. Third is the idea of tolerance, again very important. This is the idea which propagates that peace is what is required for humankind to function well. Also, he has said that in the Hindu religion, because he largely spoke about the Hindu religion, he said that people of all religions and sects are to be considered equal. Even the idea that, even you should know for that matter, that Swami Vivekananda himself was inspired by his mentor Sri Ramakrishna Paramhans, on whose name he had set up the Ramakrishna mission. So even Sri Ramakrishna Paramhans had the idea that all the religions eventually have the same goal, and this is what is the ideal that has been given in the Hindu religion also. So that is the belief that he had on tolerance. So this is what is important, again relevant in current times. Society is going more and more intolerant, so that is where the importance is. Next, he also talked about nationalism. The idea of nationalism comes from the idea of shared responsibility also. Also, his idea of nationalism is what can be traced back to his 1893 lecture in Chicago that he had given. Also, what is important is that in the year 1894 itself, he had set up the first Vedanta society. His ideas of nationalism were developed because of his extensive travels. He traveled to large parts of Europe, you should know. He engaged with many great minds of his time, for example, Max Muller, Paul Deussen, Nikola Tesla, all of these people he met, and that is where his idea of nationalism, which was service to his fellow brothers and sisters, is what was evolved. So that is what has been talked about. Another thing that is important that has been talked about is Swami Vivekanand's beliefs on Hinduism, which is again very relevant. Now, Hinduism first and foremost talked about tolerance and acceptance of all religions. That is what it was, the first message under Hinduism that was propagated by Swami Vivekanand. Another thing is that he drew a comparison between Hinduism and Buddhism, and he said both Hinduism and Buddhism are complementary to each other, and both these religions are incomplete without each other. So that is important. He talked about that how Hinduism was about assimilation, and it was not about destruction. It was about harmony, and it was about peace. So these were the messages of Hinduism which he gave. Indeed, this is also relevant. Now, what is very, very important is the view that Swami Vivekanand had on science. This is what is important. Here he had said that India must very much learn from the West. West is ahead of India. At that point of time, West was much ahead of India in terms of science. So he said that India should learn from the West. He also supported scientists like J.C. Bose. Now, why am I stressing this? Is because sometimes these kind of questions do come. In the past, once UPSC asked that what was the contribution of women in the freedom struggle. So similarly, question can be framed that what was the contribution of Swami Vivekanand to science. So this might be one area where students can be underprepared, and if we are getting an article which is discussing it, it's an opportunity for us. So we should have these points in mind. So scientist J.C. Bose was supported by Swami Vivekanand. One of Swami Vivekanand's disciples, Sarah Bull, had actually helped J.C. Bose to get some of his agreements in US. He had got his validity in US. He had got his patents in US because of the help from Swami Vivekanand's disciple, Miss Sarah Bull. So that is what you should know. Also, one of Irish teachers, this is again something that is important, that is Margaret Nobles. She was an Irish teacher who was invited to India by Swami Vivekanand, and her name was what was changed to Sister Nivedita. She was given the duty to teach the young girls in India and uplift the condition of Indian women in India. So that is what is again something that is important. That is again one of the contributions. Also, Swami Vivekanand inspired Jamshedji Tata to establish the Indian Institute of Science, as well as the Tata Iron and Steel Company is what was developed by an inspiration from Swami Vivekanand himself. He also gave the idea of making a secular monastery for uplifting India's material condition. This is what is an idea that is even propagated today. Even by Prime Minister Modi, it has been said that science should develop for the society. There should not be a gap between science and society. Scientific developments should come up to solve the problems of the society, and that is what has been advocated also. So that is what was advocated way back by Swami Vivekanand also. So this is one thing that I personally found was a very, very relevant analysis in the context of Swami Vivekanand. Another thing that is important is the impact that he has had on other leaders. Gandhiji was very much inspired by Swami Vivekanand. Nehru was very much inspired by Swami Vivekanand. Also, Subhash Chandra Bose was very much inspired by Swami Vivekanand. Also, it was after independence that on Swami Vivekanand's birthday, National Youth Day was what was celebrated. So 12th of January is celebrated as the National Youth Day after Swami Vivekanand. So indeed, he has had a major impact on all of our leaders. Also, in the context of secularism, he advocated the idea of Sarva Dharma Sambhava, which means that all the religions have the same goal and they can survive together. You should know that India's case of secularism is one of the most successful globally. This is one of the most successful model. Nowhere in the world has such a diverse country stood the test of time. Also, you should know that we have the third largest Muslim population in the world, and even today the number of recruits in the IAS from IAS Islamic State from India has been minimum. So that is something that is again which is to be credited to our nation, that despite having the third largest Muslim population, the contribution to the Islamic State was what was minimum. So all of this is what has been talked about, but today secularism is definitely threatened. It is facing challenges. There is a case where I just told you in previous articles when we were discussing on NRC, we had discussed that how laws have come where all the refugees, especially Hindu refugees, could get Indian citizenship but not the Muslim refugees. Also, more recently in the case of Jammu and Kashmir, if we will see, secularism fabric is what appears to be threatened, primarily because Jammu and Kashmir, I found a new point here, Jammu and Kashmir is the only Muslim majority state in India. This is important. So despite the fact that this is the only Muslim majority state, now this is the only state which has been regressed back to a UT. So in that particular context also, it appears that secularism is what is threatened. But nevertheless, the ideas of Swami Vivekanand are very, very important. Use them in your essays, use them in your social issues topic, use them as opening statements, use them in your ethics paper. Everywhere it has usage, so indeed very relevant. So that's about this particular article. Coming to the next article, free fall. Now the context here is with regards to a recent suicide bombing which has taken place in Afghanistan in one of the weddings, which unfortunately has killed 63 people. We have been discussing Afghanistan so much, this is so much in news these days, but that repeatedly articles do keep coming, so that again this article has very many points which are merely a repetition of what we have discussed. But yes, I found some points which were new, some de novo points, so coming to those analysis. First and foremost, you should identify that there are three relevant actors in Afghanistan. One is the Afghanistan government, we all know. Second relevant article, Taliban, we all know. But the third relevant actor that is developing in Afghanistan is the Islamic State. So this is again what is important. The government is basically losing its legitimacy and its credibility because the government is not able to ensure stability to the nation. It is not able to perform its functions well. But the government has acceptance in the urban areas. Taliban has acceptance in the rural areas. And Islamic State is trying to gain strength and trying to recoup in Afghanistan. So that is the third actor here. Also, in the current scenario, three scenarios of what are possible for Afghanistan. It might happen that after the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, Taliban as well as the government in Afghanistan can come together. They can form a collective government and they can fight against the Islamic State. This can happen as one scenario. But the differences between the Taliban and government are so much that this is what is appearing bleak. You should know that on talks with Taliban, government of Afghanistan has not been taken on board. I have discussed this previously also. The second scenario is that Taliban might rule, which will not again be stable for Afghanistan, because then they might implement the Sharia rule. So many urbans who are against this kind of a rule. They have very strict rules against women. So this is the second scenario that might emerge. And the third scenario is that of a civil war, which might take place in Afghanistan in the backdrop of all the three actors here fighting amongst themselves. So that is the third scenario which has been talked about. So that's about the analysis on Afghanistan, a repetitive topic, definitely, but very, very important for the international relations point of view. So that is where the relevance is. Coming to the next article, Trump calls. Now the context here is with regards to India, Pakistan, especially from the point of view of President Trump, who is now trying to interfere. Or for that matter, he is pressing his concern in the context of India-Pakistan tensions which have taken place after the government has gone ahead with declaring Jammu and Kashmir as a UT and dividing it into two UTs and the changes in Article 370 and finally annulling Article 35A. After that, there have been tensions between the two countries and the role of US here becomes important. Now, first and foremost here you should know is that US has been wary of this particular region because this is a nuclear region and Jammu and Kashmir is what is being called by US as a nuclear flashpoint. So US is wary of this particular region. It wants peace in this region. So it is talking with both India as well as Pakistan's leadership. So that is the first issue. The second issue is with regards to the new policy of the US. Now you should know that in the past US had a policy of a global policeman. Wherever anything bad happened, US used to interfere. It used to say that it has a moral responsibility to interfere, but now under President Trump this is not the case. President Trump is not interested in interfering in any other country until and unless it is impacting the US. But in this particular region, yes, President Trump is trying to make some negotiations, some interference is what is being seen. So that is one analysis that has been given. The third issue is with regards to Taliban versus Kashmir. So this is again something that is important. Basically what is happening here is that if Taliban is going to rise in Afghanistan, I have just discussed an article on Afghanistan and I have told you that Taliban is in a very, very powerful situation in this particular region. So what might happen is that if Taliban comes to power in Afghanistan, then Taliban might also implement the jihadi model in Kashmir. What at present is being propagated by Pakistan is that Kashmir as well as Afghanistan both are equal regions. Pakistan is viewing them equally. So it is urging Taliban to take remedial actions in both these regions. This is unacceptable to India. What is the scenario in Afghanistan is not the scenario in Kashmir. Kashmir is not stateless. Kashmir is very much India's own territory, and why should Taliban interfere in Kashmir? This is one defense that the government is giving, that if in Afghanistan scenario is such that Taliban comes to power, then the government had to take precautionary measures on Kashmir, and it is for this reason that the government has declared it as a UT. So this is one important analysis. Another thing is the interest that US has in Pakistan. We all know as of now Pakistan is powerful. It has a major role to play in Afghanistan, and US is retreating from Afghanistan. Pakistan becomes important for US here. So that is the interest that US has in Pakistan, and in this particular backdrop, US could have favored Pakistan also on the Kashmir issue. So that is why India took the preemptive steps. Some solution has been offered in this particular article, and what is this solution? The solution is that if India ensures that Kashmir is stable, peace is what is ensured to Kashmir, then in that scenario, all the claims that Pakistan is propagating or raising will be annulled. So India has to ensure that peace comes to this particular region, prosperity and development does come to Jammu and Kashmir, and that is the only solution for peace and long-lasting solution to Jammu and Kashmir as such also. So that is one suggestion which has been offered. Important article, India-Pakistan relation, very, very important for this particular year. There is so much in the India-Pakistan relation that you can literally form an essay on it, but definitely all these aspects are something that are important, and you must be well in tune with all the current affairs. So this is the recent development in the context of the India-Pakistan relation. So that's the relevance of this particular article. And that's about our articles today. These were the only important articles. All the other articles are repetitive. One article on the Chief of Defence Staff is repetitive. I have discussed it very much in detail. All the other articles were what were discussed, and these were the only new articles. So that's for our discussion. I thank you all for watching the video.